So there's nothing like a higher bill or a lower bill. Somebody has to pay the bill. Okay. So the revenue models are such that there are origins. There are some shippers at the origin. Like also in the Indian context, we see that see the cost of transport remains same. That cannot be dramatically increased or decreased. So if your cost of carrying goods from say Mumbai to say port of Nhava to say port of Dubai, similarly, is 100 rupees per cubic meter. It can be 90 or it can be 110. It cannot be drastically lower or higher. But what happens is some of the shippers traditionally the mindset is we want the cheapest rates. So they said okay, we'll only pay 50 rupees. You collect 50 rupees from destination. So whenever you hear that the CFS charges are higher, but they are nothing but the charges which have been unpaid at origin.
So we have with us Mr. Rohit Pere, co-founder of Lean Global. One of the main things I would like to start off by asking you is, how did you get into LCL logistics?
It's very interesting. I'm a postgraduate in management, and I always wanted to get into business of import-export, and I was also very fascinated with service industry. So as the luck would have it, way back in the year 1992, when I completed my masters, I got into through campus interview, I got into a company, it was a Tata company at that time. They were into freight forwarding called Force Camel and Company. 11 by 57 was the license. So one of the two-digit license. They're very, if you're familiar with the custom licensing system, there are very few companies that have two digits. Now there are three digits, companies. So I got the basics of shipping from there, and we saw that there was freight forwarding, and at that time Forbes was also an agency house. So they used to represent all the big carriers, including Maersk at that time, under the name of Wolfgang Fleming, and NYK and various other carriers, Netloy. A lot of those carriers don't even exist now. APL, they have merged and moved ahead. And then I got into another startup company, and there we realized that at that time LCL consolidation was only handled by shipping lines. There used to be some carriers like APL and few other carriers who used to have very wherever they operated, they used to offer port-to-port LCL cargo carrier options. But there was no single agency which had which was offering LCL consideration to all the sectors. So we saw that as an opportunity, and we said that why not we create that particular platform. Luckily, we had access to a particular network at that time, and we could plug in, create a platform in which we could accept cargoes for any destination in the world, put into boxes for various destinations, and from there it would get distributed. So I think having an understanding of the market requirement at that time as a neutral operator, and having an access to a network that helped us to create a LCL product.
When you talk about LCL, it's get to help SMEs or a little bit in the high value products which don't. It's a very trust-based business as well. Where do you think the SMEs fit into the whole landscape of LCL logistics, and where do you think the trust for supporting them? Because when we see bigger lines, they're not very happy if you don't do volumes. You have programs like Cut the Tail, Masterclass, you have so many other programs. Where do you think LCL logistics do they fit that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So I also want to highlight that that LCL as a mode of shipment is not only limited to SMEs. There are very large BCOs also who traditionally move on the LCL mode. I mean, if you see one of the biggest movers of LCL cargoes globally is in the multinational German company called Bosch. They move everything on most of the products move on an LCL basis. And there are several such paint manufacturers, pigment manufacturers, light engineering goods, auto components. They move cargoes on LCL mode. So it's not even SME per se, but it is across all spectrum of sizes of companies who need to move their goods on a LCL mode. Where the trust factor comes in is very important, because SME they have very limited volumes, limited customers, and they have a big challenge with the cash flows because they don't have access to unlimited capital. So they need to ensure that as soon as the goods are manufactured, they are tendered over to a reliable operator who gives them the bill of lading, which they can take to the bank, and they realize their money. But it doesn't end there. If they want a repeat order, then the LCL operator has to ensure that in the promised transit time, the cargo reaches there, it gets delivered, and the SME exporter, the small time exporter, gets a repeat order. So this, brings in the trust factor. And when you continuously do this on a repeated basis across different industries and locations, because we are also geographically spread, you don't have to be, if you're a shipper based in Chennai, you don't have to come to Bombay for shipping your goods. You can do it from Chennai port, or in Calcutta, or in Tuticorin, or in Cochin, or in Delhi. We operate from all these locations. So having a geographical reach and consistency in your service deliverable brings in that brand equity, helps you build the brand equity, which is equivalent to the trust factor that we spoke about. And also, what happens is you need to be consistent not only in terms of the services, but also in your organization that you represent. Your organization also has to have clean financial dealings. You need to have the right people in your team who are able to speak to customers and have that connect established. So all that put together makes a good LCL service provider, and that's what brings about the trust.
When we talk about shipping companies, usually what we've seen is they are based globally and they come into India first, means they operate and then they learn. But when we see vice versa, where very few companies have been able to go in that direction, why do you think it is so? Do you think the pitfalls of concentrating an Indian venture abroad is, or do you think that it is still happening because it's an inspiration?
So I would like to differentiate here into the type of business. So typically the shipping lines are people who are asset heavy. That is, they own ships, they own containers. So over a period of time, when the geographies were wide and sparse, not that they are in nearby, the geographical distance remains same, but distance is narrowed due to technology and communications instrument. So it's easy for people to communicate, travel. So that's how the people used to have agencies used to represent their interests. And then subsequently they opened their own offices because they realized that if they need to have a better control over the operations and commercial aspects of the business, they started their own office. That's on the asset side. On the non-asset side is the freight forwarder. So freight forwarder or so-called logistics service providers are service providers to the manufacturing industry. So if you notice, globally, the manufacturing companies are traditionally have been the German manufacturers, then you have been the Japanese manufacturers, you have the American manufacturers, and some European. So wherever these manufacturers wanted to sell their goods, they needed somebody to carry the goods for them. So the manufacturers went along with the freight forward. So if you are a French manufacturer, like or a German manufacturer, Siemens. So Siemens would say, okay, you are my XYZ freight forwarder in Germany. I'm opening a shop in India, or I'm opening my outlet in China. Will you set up an office there? So the freight forwarders globally, traditionally moved along with the manufacturers as their support services. That also applied not only to freight forwarding as a service, but as auditors, as accounting companies, as legal law firms. Okay, in India we have a challenge with the legal law firms. Foreign companies cannot set up a shop, but also the big four. Why are they doing such a big business in India? The big four accounting companies. Because the multinational companies are already dealing with them at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 countries globally. So they just want to deal with the same brand. Similar concept goes with the freight forwarding. So that answers. And if you notice that we Indian manufacturers, for whatever reasons, we have not grown globally. For various reasons, we are a developing economy. One, two, we always had that challenge of monopolies, restrictive trade practices act. I mean, this is a new generation, but our generation would know that MRTP did not allow the industries to go on a large scale. So since they could not manufacture on a large scale, they were not competitive, and since they are not competitive, they could not compete globally. So there was some inconsistency in our policies also as a government. In the 90s, when the economy opened up, and that's where the manufacturing opened, and in the year to 2016, when the GST came up, and subsequently, then manufacturing became much more easier. I think going forward, you will see opportunities of Indian freight forwarders going along with Indian manufacturers and setting up. Currently, also we see that some of the freight forwarders are setting up, shops in East Africa, Hong Kong, China, Dubai. Dubai, you see a lot of Indian freight forwarding companies. So it's happening, in bits and pieces. But slowly and gradually, you will see Indian freight forwarding companies also having a global footprint.
Basically, it's a part of the Indian manufacturing story.
It's an extension. It's an extension of Indian manufacturing.
Very good. If I were to ask you, what do you think the pitfalls in LCL are? There are a lot of times when we have heard horror stories when the CFS bill comes in, which is more than the cost of freight for a full container. Do you think that these are still prevalent, these are unsafe practices, or do you think this is just unawareness by the shipping, by the people handling the shipments?
So there's nothing like a higher bill or a lower bill. Somebody has to pay the bill. Okay. So the revenue models are such that there are origins. There are some shippers at the origin. Like also in the Indian context, we see that the cost of transport remains same. That cannot be dramatically increased or decreased. So if your cost of carrying goods from say Mumbai to say port of Nhava Sheva to say port of Dubai, similarly, is 100 rupees per cubic meter. It can be 90 or it can be 110. It cannot be drastically lower or higher. But what happens is some of the shippers, traditionally, the mindset is we want the cheapest rates. So they said, okay, we'll only pay 50 rupees. You collect 50 rupees from destination. So whenever you hear that the CFS charges are higher, but they are nothing but the charges which have been unpaid at the origin, which are the original charges, which end up landing as an invoice, and which the importer ends up paying. If the importer is wise and smart enough to have that understanding with the shipper, okay, this is what I'm going to pay, or you ship with this freight forwarders, I have arrangements with them. There's no reason why he has to pay any higher. I think it's lack of awareness or inability or lack of initiative on the shippers. His idea of cheaper freight drives the destination charges higher. So it is not a service provider, it is not a shipping line, it is not a freight forwarder. It is the lack of clarity with the shipper and importer. That's what drives the charges either at origin or at destination.
Penny wise, pound foolish.
You can say that.
So, if I were to conclude this session, I would ask you to say something to students, anything you'd like them to know about HCL as an industry, or anything you would like to talk to them.
I think I would not be very specific to LCL, but I think what one of the chief guests, the Honorable Commissioner of Customs, Mr. Ravi, what he mentioned was, hard work. There is no alternative to hard work. And you are at this point in your life. Like today also, I have some regrets that as to when I was younger, I could have done few more things that I'm doing now. But that realization comes much later. What I would suggest is you have 24 hours in a day. What you require is only 7-8 hours of sleep. Remaining 16 hours you have. How productively you use it, I think is most important. So it can be your learning, it can be just having experiences. Because how do you become a more informed human being? Your information, knowledge, awareness goes up through experiences. So rather than time that goes into watching maybe teledrama, a series, going here and there, just have experiences, just travel, or just go and attend workshops, seminars, or just move around, talk to your friends, talk to people around you. If you have somebody in your family who owns a shop, just go and sit at the shop, work at the counter, or take some experiences through part-time jobs. Enrich yourself with knowledge, information. That's going to help you throughout. That's going to make you a more mature human being. That's going to make you aware of how the world functions, and that knowledge will help you in your work, in your business, to become a better family man, to become a better husband, become a better father. These experiences really help you. So, invest your time in productive things and into learning. Be a daily learner. Ask yourself every day, at the end of the day, make a diary. What have I learned today? Even if it's small things like, you probably read about, a good article in a newspaper. That's also learning, right? So just write that, okay, I read this article and I came to know about maybe some Japanese movies, or it can be anything. I mean, about shipping in China, or how logistics works in US. Not necessarily the knowledge has to be limited to what you are learning. Knowledge can be anything. Knowledge is universal. So every day, learn or read something new, enrich your knowledge. That will that will help you become a better human. This is what I have to do.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful.
And one small message there. Thank you. So before you track, and also take care of your health, because health is wealth, and only and it is famously said that a healthy mind dwells in a healthy mind dwells in a healthy body. So only if you are healthy, if you are fit, you will be able to enjoy life. Because if you can't walk, if you have BP issue, if you have diabetes issue, you cannot eat half the things, you cannot travel to half the places. What is the whole point in God has given us this beautiful as a human being, given an opportunity to be a human being. You could have been an animal, but you are a human being. So there's a reason for that, right? So don't waste away that opportunity of being born as a human. And there are so many things you can do. And if you are well learned, if you have good health, then you can become a better human in terms of enjoying life and being doing good to others. Is what I would say.
Thank you, sir.